Welcome to the Podforce One podcast, where we talk to some of the world's most powerful people. This week, we are coming to you from Joe Biden's fake Oval Office for an interview with Tom Homan, who is in charge of implementing the president's immigration agenda. He has one of the longest titles in Washington. He is the Executive Associate Director of Enforcement and Removal Operations at the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Most of us just call him the White House Border Czar. Tom Homan, ICE Czar, Border Czar, thank you so much for sparing some time to speak with us at a really important time in America's history. And congratulations for so quickly closing the border. But I guess now the really tough stuff comes with the deportations.
President Trump, first of all, his executive orders were game changers. And we knew that coming back in the second administration, the Remain in Mexico, the third safe country agreements, ending catch release, all those worked, the wall. And the president came back and reinstituted those executive orders, which, again, were game changers. The Remain in Mexico is the biggest game changer. And that, along with the men and women of the Border Patrol, finally getting to do their job rather than acting as tourist agents or Uber drivers, they actually got to enforce the law. Ending catch release was huge. So we simply enforced the law, right? Ending catch release. Entering this country illegally is a crime. But the federal statute says you show up our border without proper documentation to enter, and you enter illegally, you shall be detained. That's what the federal statute says. You shall be detained. So we're just enforcing the law. We're not releasing people.
Joe Biden could have done that during the last 4 years, and he pretended that he needed legislation. He blamed Donald Trump. We're sitting in this crazy room, which is the fake Oval Office that he had built for himself. For what reason? To me, it's sort of symbolic of his presidency. What do you make of why Joe Biden did what he did? Why did he fling open the border like no other president in history has done and then lie about it?
I've worked for 6 presidents, starting with Ronald Reagan. Every president I ever worked for took steps to secure the border. Even Clinton and Obama took some steps. No one's more successful than President Trump. His success was unprecedented. But Joe Biden, I've said this many times, Joe Biden's the first president in the history of this nation who came into office and unsecured the border on purpose. Because we handed him the most secure border in my lifetime. And it wasn't incompetence, it wasn't mismanagement. This was by design. They opened it. They meant to open it and knew exactly what they were doing. And why do I say that? Because when Joe Biden was vice president under Barack Obama, Alejandro Mayorkas was deputy secretary. We had a surge at the border under Obama. How do we stop it? We built detention centers. We built family residential centers. We detained people long enough to see a judge. Took about 40 days. 90% lost their case. That's the average. 90% people claim asylum don't qualify. 90% lost their cases. We put them on an airplane, send them home. The numbers tank. What did they do when they became the president and secretary? The complete opposite. They weren't detaining him. They were releasing him, weren't making him see a judge. And at the same time, we had historic illegal immigration on the border. Alejandro Mayorkas told ICE, you can't arrest somebody for simply being here illegally. They got to be convicted of a serious crime or you can't target them for arrest. So they knowingly did the complete opposite of what they know worked earlier.
Was it Mayorkas or was it Biden and Mayorkas was just following his orders? Who decided deliberately to open the border and allow in how many now? How many illegal aliens have come in?
Well, look, the buck stops with Biden, but who knows who was, pulling his cord, because I think we all can agree he wasn't fully here. And everybody asks me, why would they do such a thing? Alejandro Mayorkas, like people say, well, you can't really beat up him. He's following orders. No, that's garbage. Come on. He's the Secretary of Homeland Security.
And you watched him in Congress when he was testifying. He was very hostile to Republicans.
What people need to remember, he's the Secretary of Homeland Security. He knew every day. He knew we're having people from 180 different countries coming across that border, many from special interest countries. He knew that this was a national security vulnerability. So even if he was following orders, if he had any integrity at all, he would have stood up and sounded the alarm, saying, I can no longer do this. I'm the Secretary of Homeland Security. My number one responsibility is protection of Homeland. I can't do it with an open border. Can't do it. So, people want to say, well, give him a pass because he was following orders. No, I don't give him a pass. He's Secretary of Homeland Security. He needed to act like it. He had a responsibility. He took an oath. But
you knew him, didn't you? You worked with him once.
I worked with him under Obama administration. And he went on the streets with me on criminal operations to complete 180 of what I saw when he was deputy secretary.
Why?
I have no idea. Either he put a good show on during the Obama years or he changed 180. But even Joe Biden, he was vice president of Obama. In FY12, we removed 409,000 aliens, a record.
Yeah.
So this Biden administration just did a complete 180. And it was again, they created the biggest national security vulnerability I've ever seen. And people always say, well, why would they open the border up? Well, the only thing I can think of is they saw a future political benefit from opening that border, right? I think part of it was they thought that all these millions of people were going to be future Democratic voters. But I also think when Biden came in and signed over 90 executive orders abolishing everything we did under Trump 45, he also overturned the Trump census rule, which says basically illegal aliens be counted in the census. Mm-hmm. So the millions of illegal aliens being released in sanctuary cities like New York will be counted in the next census, which is going to mean what? It means more seats in the House for the Dems.
Right.
So they certainly saw a political benefit. There's no other reason, because every Democrat I ask this question to, they can't answer me. What's the downside unless drugs come across? What's the downside unless sex trafficking of women and children? What's the downside unless people in terrorist watches coming across? What's the downside unless gang members and criminals coming across? What is the downside on a secure border?
Well, it killed him politically in the end, didn't it?
That is the only thing they can get. That, and they'll never admit that, but they know that they see a future political benefit. That's why, look, you didn't get one Democratic vote on legislation to require voter ID. I mean, it's obvious what they're doing. American people aren't stupid. I'm certainly not stupid.
So short-term political death for them because it killed Biden's, or if Kamala Harris's bid, but long-term benefit for them demographically.
I think they thought they were fooling the American people. Mm. I mean, Alejandro Mayorkas and Vice President Harris was standing up on stage every day and said border secure. Then they say just before the election, they fixed it, right? The borders were way down. Again, lying to the American people, the border numbers weren't way down. They created two different buckets. The CHNV, Cuban, Haiti, Nicaragua, Venezuela program. Then they created CBP-1 app. So they took the same population of illegal aliens south of the border. They put thousands of them into the CHNV program. They put thousands of them in the CBP app every day, claiming they're legal pathways. No, they weren't. They created two buckets so they could say they're not illegal entries. They came in through this legal pathway. So it was a shell game.
So illegal aliens, they rebadged them as asylum seekers or somehow legal through these programs, and then lied and said the numbers were down.
Right. They said it was a legal pathway, but it wasn't. Come on, they abused asylum. I'm not an attorney, but I can read. I know what the asylum rule says. There was no case-by-case review based on significant details of each significant case and why it's a significant public benefit. They never did it. When the president stands on stage, I'm going to bring 30,000 a month in CHNV. Where'd you get that number from? Where's the case-by-case analysis on this, right?
Yeah.
So, they created these two buckets, called them legal pathways, which they weren't. That's why it's being litigated in court. But if you add the illegal entries plus the CHNV plus the CBP-1 app, the numbers didn't go down. No. They just created these buckets and saying, well, illegal entries went down.
But it's the same scam all over the world. You have the people smugglers coach their illegal aliens to pretend that they're asylum seekers. And, obviously the government ought to have been aware of that, but they went along with it and encouraged it.
Absolutely. If you go 10 years back and look at immigration court data, it says that nearly 9 out of 10 people who claim asylum at our border will end up with an order removal. Right. They're not escaping fear and persecution from their home government because of race, religion, or political affiliation. or participation in a specific social group. They're coming there for a better life. They're coming there for a job. And I get that, but that's not asylum. So in the last decade or longer, 9 out of 10 on average don't qualify for asylum. But they still allowed them in. They knew 9 out of 10 didn't qualify. They should have kept the Remain in Mexico program back in. You can still claim asylum, but you're going to wait in Mexico.
Yeah. And why did they put them into hotels that we were paying, in New York, these 4-star hotels, $500 a night? Why did they do that instead of keeping them in ICE detention?
Great question. It's had to do with what we were just talking about. They knew 9 out of 10 of them, based on real data, would not qualify for asylum. They'd get an order removal and be sent home. And here's why they released them. There was thousands of empty ICE beds already paid for by the taxpayer, sitting empty at about $127 a night. They let those beds empty and gave them to the NGOs and put them in the bed at $500 a night. Why did they do that? Because they knew the system. Immigration court will prioritize those in detention, which means if you're in an ICE bed, you're going to get a hearing in less than 40 days. 9 out of 10 lose, they go on an airplane, they're sent home. However, they also knew if they put them in a non-detained docket with an NGO, their hearings in 3, 5, 7 years. What happens then? They still know 9 out of 10 will fail, but what happens then? They're hoping for a Democratic administration that can award these millions of people amnesty. They're playing the long game. This is their plan from the beginning. They played the long game, and that's why they're so pissed off right now, because we're removing record numbers of them, and we're ruining their plan. But they played the long game, and I saw it from the very start what they're trying to do.
They were also flying them in. We were at New York Post, we went up to Westchester Airport and we were watching these flights that were coming from the border at 2, 3 in the morning, dislodging illegal aliens into buses and then shipping them around the tri-state area and depositing them in small numbers in various places. And the Biden administration was very secretive about that. They then told us that they were children. But, I watched them get off the plane, and so did my photographer, night after night, and they were not children. They maybe, a few of them might have been 17, 18, but they were mainly military-aged males, hairy males in their 20s. So was that part of the scam? Were they passing off illegal aliens as children who were really adults?
Yeah, in many situations, they absolutely did. And you got to remember, through the CHMV program, they were flying people from Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela.
Straight in.
But you know that, like most of the Venezuelans, they didn't come to Venezuela. They flew in from Ecuador and other countries. They left Venezuela years ago. So they weren't really escaping fear and persecution in Venezuela. They're taking advantage of this giveaway program.
But why would we go to other countries when the border was already overwhelmed? Why would we go and pick them up in another country and fly them in?
They wanted to overwhelm the system.
Yeah.
Overwhelm the system because they knew there'd be millions of people that they thought would be in their corner in the future. They sold this country out for future political power. There is no other reason why you would open a border. Like I said, there's no downside in a secure border. There's only one reason you would do this, because you saw a future political benefit in doing it.
I'm Catholic. I know you're Catholic. Joe Biden professed to be a Catholic and certainly tried to curry favour with Pope Francis. Do you think there might have been some sort of trying to buy a ticket to heaven sort of attitude from Joe Biden he was always on the phone, he used to boast to Pope Francis, sort of being encouraged to open the border. Do you think there might have been an element of that? Because I know Pope Francis was very critical of Donald Trump when he came in and started closing the border, and you've been outspoken about that.
Well, I think the Pope's wrong,
Former Pope.
God rest his soul, but he questioned us enforcing immigration law. He questioned building the wall, when in fact he has a wall around the Vatican.
Yeah.
And actually, if you go over that wall of the Vatican, the penalties for entering the Vatican illegally is much stiffer than our penalties are. Yeah, absolutely. So I wish, I'll stick where I said the first time. I think he needs to spend time fixing the Catholic Church as a lifelong Catholic. He's got a lot of problems there. Leave the border to us. But I don't know if President Biden was current in favor or not. I mean, he claimed to be a Catholic, but so did Nancy Pelosi, who both support killing babies.
Yes.
Abortion. And I'm not going to judge him, but as a Catholic, I mean, I think it's hard to be a Catholic, claim to be a Catholic when you support abortion. I don't know how you mix the two. But I don't know his discussions with the Pope were, but the Pope was supportive of open borders. And that's one of the differences me and him had. And what he doesn't understand, which I wish he sat down and talked to me for a little while, secure borders saves lives. It's about saving lives, because right now, illegal crossings on the border are down 96%, right? Historic. There's been studies done by nonpartisan groups that say that up to 31% of women that make that journey through the cartels get sexually assaulted. They get raped. Children get sexually assaulted. So if 31% admitted it, how many actually got sexually assaulted, right? So when President Trump has illegal immigration down 96%, when 96% less people are coming, how many women and children aren't being raped and sexually assaulted?
Right.
How many children aren't drowning in the river? How many aliens aren't drowning in the river? How many pounds of fentanyl isn't getting into the country killing Americans when the border goes 100% on the border and it's closed? How many known sexual predators or gang members or people carrying fentanyl are coming across? Yeah. I mean, secure borders save lives. Yes. And let me compare the Biden administration, who says our policies are much more humane on the border because you open the border up, right? 250,000 Americans dead from fentanyl, historic number. Over 4,000 aliens died making that journey that we know of, historic record. A 6-fold increase in sex trafficking of women and children. A record number of people on terrorist watch lists across the border. Under Biden, 400. Under Trump's first term, 14 in 4 years, compared to his over 400.
Wow.
So whose policy is more humane?
Yes.
Biden's policy were killing Americans at record numbers, killing aliens at record numbers, and putting this country at a great national security vulnerability. You can't compare the two administrations. Secure borders save lives.
Yeah. And you've been doing this since 1984. You said you've worked for 6 presidents. What on earth possessed you to come back this time? I read somewhere that you woke up mad every day of Joe Biden's presidency. Was that it?
You know, I got a long career. I started in 1984, and I've seen a lot of tragedy in my career. Yeah. And, I've stood back with a tractor trailer and 19 dead people baked to death, including a 5-year-old boy. That changed me forever. I was in Operation Ice Storm in Phoenix, Arizona, where they were smuggling so many people that smuggling organizations were ripping each other off. Rather than ripping their drug loads off, they're ripping people off from each other because they're worth a lot of money. When an illegal alien couldn't pay his fee, the organization agreed, well, we'll smuggle you to the United States for $5,000 to get you to Chicago. Then when they got him in Phoenix out of a load house, they called a relative up and said, okay, now you need to wire us the money, $10,000. And they said, well, we agreed to 5. Well, it's 10. And you're going to pay it or we'll kill them. And they did. Oh. They would call relatives up. The relative would listen on the phone as they tortured and killed the relatives that were being smuggled in the country. I mean, I've talked to little girls. I say this all the time. I'm young as 9. You get on your knees, you talk to a little girl. It's raped multiple times by sick members of the cartels. It's part of the passing into the United States. I've seen so much tragedy in my life. In doing this job, I knew when Biden was president, I woke up every day, knew how many children died last night, how many women got raped last night, how many Americans are going to die from fentanyl poisoning, how many more angel moms and dads am I going to meet? I met hundreds of them whose children, you want to talk about family separations, they bury their children because they're killed by an illegal alien. I saw so much tragedy, so I knew whether it's open borders, we're going to see more people die, more people getting raped, more drugs coming across, more sex trafficking. So yeah, I woke up every day pissed off that any president would come into office and purposely unsecure the most secure border we ever had, knowing all these bad things would happen. So I came out of retirement during Trump 45. The day I retired, I got a phone call from John Kelly, who's the Secretary of Homeland Security. He says, I know this is bad timing, but the president like you to stay and run the agency. This was ICE at the time. And I told him it was bad timing. I just retired. And he said, no, you didn't. Paperwork's on my desk. So they gave me the weekend to talk to my family and other people. And I came back around 45, was proud to do it. The second time, I've talked to the president a lot the last 4 years. I was out there doing events with him, talking about the devastation of our border. So I was the first person he called, bringing back, which again, it's a proud moment, but I was actually out to dinner with my wife, and my phone rang and I looked down and it says POTUS. And my wife says, uh-oh. He's asking you to come back, isn't he? So I walked outside, and the first thing he said to me was, you've been bitching about it for 4 years. I'll come back and fix it. So how do you say no?
Yeah.
Right? And even my wife said, it's a huge pay cut for me because I was doing pretty good in the private sector. Even my wife said I had to go back. And this is kind of a jokingly, but it wasn't a joke at first. She said, you need to go back or we'll get divorced. I said, why would you say something like that? Because if you don't go back, you'll be waking up every day pissed off that you didn't go back. And I got to live with 4 more years of being pissed off. So go back and do the job. So
good woman.
She's a trooper. But I didn't hesitate. Yes, I'm back. And I'm glad to be back. And I'm surrounded by some of the smartest people. I mean, every morning, 10 a.m., I walk into a meeting, Steve Miller. People have their opinions of him. Steve Miller's brilliant. Probably the smartest man I've met in my entire life. Brilliant, the architect. I worked with a team up here at the White House who spent their entire career doing this work. No one longer than me, of course, I'm the old guy, but everybody in that room is dedicated to this mission. And he brought in a great team, President Trump. He built a great team.
Well, he needs to, I guess, because he's got the judiciary against him, all the lawfare happening. There's whatever they can do to stop deportations, they're doing.
Oh, absolutely. They're not going to stop us. I mean, they may slow us down a bit and put roadblocks up, but we're not going away. I'm not going away. Look, I got hit pieces on me every day. They figure if they say bad things about you, maybe you'll go away. I'm not going anywhere. I mean, I had 1,000 protesters at my house in upstate New York at my lake house. You're not going to shut me up. I'm not going away because I know how important it is to secure our border. I know that you can't have national security if you don't have border security. We need to know who's coming in, what's coming in, where it's coming in, why it's coming in, where it's going. Without that, you can't have strong national security. I think we're proving that right now during this Iran conflict.
Yeah.
What a danger an open border is. So I'm glad to be back. Again, got the most secure border in the history of this nation. We're arresting about 3 times the illegal alien criminals in this country that Joe Biden did, so that's going good. And we're finding thousands of missing children. Some are perfectly fine with their families. Some were in sex trafficking. Some were in forced labor. But we're going to find every one of these kids. President Trump made a promise. We're going to keep that promise.
Finding those children, I mean, when we were following some of these buses that took the illegal aliens off the planes, they were being dropped off in like parking lots on the side of the freeway, and then cars were coming up and picking up the people. No one was vetting them. No one was even looking at the license plates. There were kind of staff contractors, I guess, standing around, but nobody was asked who they were when they picked up these alleged children.
Well, here's what they did. Under the Biden administration, you had the Secretary of HHS, but Sarah, Secretary. And I saw him on stage several times bragging how quick we release unaccompanied children. Oh, we release them very quick. They're not in our custody very long. And I knew that was a problem because I knew they weren't properly vetting. Because the whole administration, even on the border with Border Patrol agents, Border Patrol agents were under orders. Process quick, release quick. Because if there's no overcrowding, nothing to see here, got a secure border. It wasn't until Bill Maloogian was down there and got the video of the 5,000 Haitians on their bridge.
Yes.
That was a bad day for the administration. So ever since then, it's all been about optics of the problem. They didn't care about the invasion itself. It was the optics. What are the American people going to see? So Border Patrol's under orders, process quick, release quick. They released many people before the vetting even came back, if they're from a special interest alien country. I know that because whistleblowers called me. And the children, same thing. If there's no overcrowding in the ORR facilities, then we can say the border is secure. So they didn't properly vet. We did DNA testing in Trump Tour 45.
To see if they were related, if they were really.
And we found in some of the pilots we did with DNA testing, as high as 30%, the families weren't families. Right. No relatives at all. They were being trafficked.
So where did the kids come from? Were they kidnapped, or did the parents volunteer them?
It's a mix. I mean, a lot of parents paid a smuggling organization and smuggled their kids up here. Some of these children were trafficked. We know HSI had several investigations where a child was rented by the criminal cartel to an adult male or female, cross the border because family unit can be released right away. When you're done, send the kid back, we re-rent them.
And what happens to those children when they're here?
Well, that's why we're out looking for them. Like, there was like 300,000 missing children under the last administration. We're out looking for now because, again, we found thousands of them.
300,000.
Some of the children were we found with their family, perfectly safe. They just didn't respond to call-ins, or they went and took off because they didn't want to face the consequences of immigration court. But we rescued some victims of sex trafficking. We rescued some victims on forced labor. We found children working on ranches and chicken farms, not going to school, but enslaved labor in the United States of America. So that was the whole nexus of the last administration.
And sex traffic to pedophiles?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We found some in sex trafficking. I mean, we just, I think 2 weeks ago, we rescued a 14-year-old that was already pregnant, living with adult men. It's just, if you go to New York City now, you go, in areas in New York City, you'll see a lot of young ladies out. I just met with NYPD and talked about sex trafficking in New York City. And the current mayor, Mayor Adams, he's all about public safety. He doesn't want to be an immigration officer. I don't want to be an immigration officer. Leave that to us. But he does want to rescue children that's been sex trafficked and forced labor. He does want to remove illegal aliens out of a significant public safety threat. Of course, he's taking on hate from the left. But we hope the NYPD helps us finding some of these kids because they know the area better than we do. They know the neighborhoods. They have plenty of informants. So we're hoping the NYPD will help us find these kids. Well, every PD will help us find these kids. We're out there looking every day.
You're not getting much help in Los Angeles, and there have been so many attacks on ICE officers and these big riots that are happening. LA, what the story that doesn't get out is why were we there? I'll tell you why we're there. I went out there on a Wednesday to start the operation. We were serving 3 criminal arrest warrants, criminal search warrants on a couple locations. It was a criminal investigation having to deal with money laundering, tax evasion, and customs fraud, where millions of dollars of unclaimed property was brought to the United States and no tariffs were paid on it, and millions of dollars. And we know that the garment district, there is strong suspicion that some of that funding is sent to Mexico and Colombia to fund cartel activity. Cartels are involved. So it's a criminal operation, a criminal investigation, and criminal search warrant. But right away, the left went nuts. ICE is doing an immigration raid, and they came out in force. We did do criminal operations. On top of that operation, we're targeting at-large criminal illegal aliens, rapists, murderers, people that were illegal in the United States that were convicted of murder. We had all these people, but no one wanted to talk about that. Everybody talked about the racist ICE, even members of Congress and Governor Newsom and Mayor Bass. It's all about the racist Alex
ICE.
Padilla. Yeah.
And the truth was, look at who we arrested. Look at the warrants we served and why we served them. We're trying to shut down cartel activity, which is killing Americans. We're trying to take the worst of words off the streets of LA. You would think the mayor and the governor and Padilla and the rest of them would say, ICE, God bless you. Thank you for making our state safer. Because every criminal threat we take off the streets of LA makes that city more safe. So I said it again, we're not going to protest all you want. It's unfortunate. But we're going to continue doing what we're doing. We have teams out in LA today. We'll have teams out in LA tomorrow. We're going to keep doing what we're doing. You're not going to stop us.
And Kristi Noem was their Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. She's up on stage giving a talk, and Alex Padilla, this Californian politician, Democrat, basically lurches forward and then gets arrested, and he turns himself into a martyr, crying in Congress about the heavy treatment.
It's pathetic. It's just pathetic.
Why are they doing that?
He knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah.
Let's make a scene. Let me get on TV. And, because they can't argue what we're doing. They can't honestly sit there and say, okay, ICE shouldn't remove criminal aliens from the United States. They're screaming and yelling about ICE arresting people and ICE enforcing the law and how dare they do this. Meanwhile, in 4 years under Biden, we just discussed it. Sex trafficking women and children skyrocketed, not a word.
Yes.
Thousands of children are being smuggled in the country every week. Over 500,000 children were smuggled into the United States, separated from their families, put in the hands of criminal cartels, smuggled in the United States. Not a word. 1,800 gotaways a day. Not a word. Apprehensions climbed over 10,000 a day. Not a word. Over 400 people on terrorist watch list crossed that got apprehended. Not a word. But more than that, 2 million gotaways. More than 2 million people crossed the border. We don't know who they are, where they came from, why they're here, because they got away. Not a word. So they didn't care about the legal process then. They didn't care about justification then, right? Screw the legal process. Let them all in. We're not going to say we're going to let the border be open. We'll create the biggest national security vulnerability in this nation. We're not going to say a word. Now all of a sudden we're trying to enforce law. Now they're up in arms. It's disgusting.
It is, and it's also frightening. You say the biggest national security problem. There have been, I think, over 1,000 Iranians, also Chinese, Russians have come over the border. We don't know where they are, do we?
The intelligence community and the Bureau are tracking some, but 2 million plus known gotaways. People caught on video, drone traffic, sensor traffic, that enter the United States. We got images of them.
And they've evaded border patrol.
And here's what people got to ask themselves. And that's why I call it the biggest vulnerability ever. You pay the cartel a certain amount of money to get across the border. You pay them this amount to get to the border. You see a green uniform under Biden administration, turn yourself in. You get released within a day. You get a free airline ticket to the city of your choice. You get a free hotel room. You get 3 meals a day. You get free medical care, and you get work authorization within a few months. Why did 2 million plus pay more not to take advantage of that giveaway program? Why did they pay more not to get a free airline ticket, not to get a free hotel room, not to get free food?
Bad intent.
Because they didn't want to be vetted, they didn't want to be fingerprinted. That just scared the hell out of everybody. It scares the hell out of me.
Yeah.
So again, 180 different countries. That's almost every country in the world across that border.
Yeah.
And we know that people from Syria, Turkey, Uzbekistan, Russia, China, Iraq, Iran, all came across that border.
And ISIS sympathizers or ISIS-linked terrorists. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I've said for a long time, you'd be a fool to think something's not coming.
Mm.
The thing that gives me any comfort is they've got President Trump in the White House. He's a strong president. So he's got everybody working really hard right now. I mean, I know everybody within the Justice Department, Homeland Security is working on locating as many people as they can. What's
the biggest threat, do you think?
Oh, I think right now, the DHS just put out a terror watch this weekend. They know Iran's a threat. We know there's Iranian nationals in here that were released by the Biden administration into the United States. We also know there's no way you count over 2 million illegal aliens coming to this country. There's no way there's not a single one of them being from Iran. It's just a law of averages. 2 million people come across this border that paid more to get away. If they arrested 400 people on terrorist watch lists, so you can imagine how many paid more to get away.
So 10.5 came over and were met by border control. You're saying 2 million, over 2 million were known gotaways. So that's 12.5. Are there any more, like unknown gotaways?
Unknown gotaways, we don't know how many there are. I mean, there are places on the border under the Biden administration where the Border Patrol was so overwhelmed. On average, 70% of agents were off the line many days. 70%. There were several times under Joe Biden where the entire sector was shut down. Every agent was brought in to process the overcrowding. So there wasn't a single Border Patrol uniform for hundreds of miles.
Right.
So we can't capture video and drone traffic and sensor traffic on everybody. So there are also areas on the border where technology is very low. The Big Bend National Park, very, very hard terrain to get through. You could put 100 people through there a day, you wouldn't even know it.
So potentially how many could have come across under Biden?
We have no idea. Right.
Could be 20 million?
Could be. We don't know. We don't know what we don't know. We just don't know. We can only count what we know. So,
Frightening.
So the unknown gotaways, who knows? But, people keep saying there's 12 million illegal aliens in this country. We've been using 12 million for the last 15 years. There's more than 20 in this country, in my opinion, just because of what Joe Biden did.
Yeah. Let's go back to why you're kind of in service from the first place. You grew up in West Carthage in very upstate New York. Tell us about your childhood.
I grew up in a big family, 7 kids. Grew up in West Carthage, we're outside of Fort Drum. When I grew up, it was a very patriotic town. I mean, everybody had an American flag on the front porch, Parades were a big deal. It's a farming community. When you're up there, either you're working on a dairy farm or you work at Fort Drum,
right?
Or you're a logger. It's about the only jobs up there. But I grew up in a big family, very Catholic family, and my dad was a cop, my grandfather was a cop, and I always knew I was going to be a cop. I always knew I wanted to be a cop of some kind. Actually, I got one brother who's a fireman, paramedic. 5 sisters, most of them were nurses.
Right.
And the ones that weren't nurses were paramedic, EMT. Really? So, my family raised, I think, a group of kids that wanted to serve the community. And I stepped in day one. When I became the ICE director, it was a big deal. And I remember the first day in the office, my public affairs officer came in and said, okay, well, it's your first day in the office. You got Fox News, you got ABC News, you got NBC News, you got Washington Post, you got New York Times. We got some of these interviews. I looked at her and says, WWNY TV and Watertown Daily Times. And she looked at me and says, excuse me? And I said it again, Watertown Daily Times, WWNY TV. She goes, who are they? This is my hometown newspaper and TV station. She goes, Mr. Homan, all due respect, we got nationally syndicated. I said, I don't care. I says, you ever read that story that it takes a village to raise you? That community raised me. I wanted to give them the first interview. And so we flew to New York and they got the first interviews because it really takes a village to raise you. And I say this jokingly, but not so unjokingly. I think I grew up in a small village, less than 2,500 people.
Right.
I think most of the mothers in that village spanked me at one time or another when I was growing up.
Spanked you.
Because it was a community. It was a village. And so I grew up in a small town. And with a small police force, and I still own a home. I bought a lake home up there near the Canadian border because I was born there, I was raised there, went to college there, I was a cop there. I want to retire there someday. I just don't know when that's going to be. I keep coming out of retirement, coming back here.
They must be very proud of you up there.
I hope. Yeah. But I had 1,000 protesters around a few weeks ago, so some people aren't happy with the Trump administration. But again, if they knew what I knew, the people who don't like what we're doing, who don't like me, if you wore my shoes for 40 years and seen what I've seen, the tragedies, you'd understand me. Because I've seen too much death. And I've seen so many things that can be fixed. Like right now, as we just discussed, 96% less people coming. How many people aren't dying?
Yeah, yeah. And now your dad was a World War II veteran, wasn't he? As well as being a cop and a judge in town. Tell us about him.
Your homework.
Tell us about your father and what he taught you.
My father was my hero. He was a World War II hero. He won a lot of medals, was awarded a lot of medals, and never talked about it. Huh. And actually, when he got really sick, we created a shadow box with his medals in it. He never told me how he got 2 Purple Hearts, how did he get 2 Bronze Stars.
Wow.
He didn't want to talk about it. And he never showcased these things.
He would have seen a lot of death as well.
Oh, absolutely. Mm-hmm. But when you walk in my office, my home office, I got them hanging on my wall. Matter of fact, I was ice director. I had them hanging on the wall when I was ice director. And Secretary John Kelly, who was a 4-star Marine general, I remember he walking in one day. He looked over it right away. He looked at it. He goes, "They're not your medals." I said, "No, sir." He goes, "It's 11th Airborne." He goes, "Your dad?" I go, "Yeah." So he walked over there. He says, "You know what all these medals mean?" I said, "No." And he walked me through every medal, telling me what this medal meant, what that medal meant, what this medal meant. And we even got a picture of that where he showed me the medal. So I got the medals in that picture in my home office now. So my dad was he's a tough guy. He was a war hero and didn't brag about it.
And what about your mother?
My dad was strict. My mom, not so much.
Right.
But
She spoiled you?
my mom, I had great parents. You know, I'm telling you, my childhood haunts me because I had such a great childhood, had great parents. And it haunts me that I fear that children don't have that same upbringing that I had. I mean, in that small village, and we had 2 paper mills. And you get the mill whistle go off in the morning, go off at noon, go off at 5 p.m. And during the summer, we knew we get together, go ride your bike around, get enough guys to get a baseball game, all your buddies. We knew when that noon whistle blew off, you had to get on your bike and go home for lunch. That's lunch, you go back to the ball diamond, play some more baseball. We knew at 5 p.m. that mill whistle went off, we had to get our bikes, go home, and be prepared for dinner. And it was a great upbringing. It was a great village, and I still keep contact with 7 or 8 of my friends I grew up with.
Right.
They're all done very well because of the work ethic in that town. Everybody worked very hard. Everybody's very patriotic, and I can tell you, my 7 or 8 best friends, they've all done very well for themselves in their lives. As a matter of fact, we're meeting again next week. We do meet once a year and talk. We always talk about what a great upbringing we had. And that's the kind of country President Trump wants.
Yeah.
That's why I love the guy. I mean, he wants an American flag on everybody's front porch. He wants kids to feel safe, to go to the playground, spend the whole day there playing baseball, not worry about someone grabbing you.
Yeah.
And, it's, again, my greatest childhood ever, right? No one's had a better childhood than me. We didn't have a lot of money. My parents lived check to check, but you know what? It was a great childhood.
And you sort of haunted, you said, is that partly because you think that your own children, you couldn't give that same childhood to?
Shamefully, yeah. I mean, I'm busy. And I spent a lot of time with my boys growing up, but as I got more and more climbed the ladder of what I've done with ice director and now back, I don't see my family very much. My wife's living separately from me right now, mainly because I work so many hours, but mostly because of the death threats against me. She's someplace else. I see her as much as I can, but the death threats against me and my family are outrageous. So, but my boys both growing up, one followed my footsteps. The other one still bankrupt me in college, but we'll deal with it.
And that's scary and a huge sacrifice for you. I wasn't aware of that. Your wife, tell us how you met.
Blind date.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Where?
Wow. 1998. Met on a blind date. She's the best thing ever happened to me. Gave me 2 great boys, and she stood by all this. Look, we moved numerous times across the country. The protests at my home, the death threats, the constant travel, and right now living apart. I mean, she's sacrificed an awful lot. So she's the best thing ever happened to me.
And she must be a patriot as well.
Absolutely.
And
she knew coming back second time I was taking a huge pay cut. Not many wives want to hear that.
No.
She's in the middle of remodeling a bunch of stuff, and all that stopped. Because I'm leaving the private sector, going back to government paycheck, and no one in the government makes a lot of money. But I felt a duty to come back. I've done this my whole career. I know how to help. I know how to fix it. And I wake up every day like a kid in a candy store. I got the greatest present of my lifetime down the hall. Who gets it? He understands it. When it comes to border security, immigration enforcement, he gets it. And if we're going to fix it, he's the guy to fix it.
last question. Tell us about Donald Trump. What sort of a person is he to work for, and what sort of legacy do you hope that you leave the country?
Donald Trump, I'll say it again, I think he's the greatest president in my lifetime because he keeps his promises. And I've had many conversations with him, whether it's on Air Force One in the Oval Office or on trips. He wants the America that you and I grew up in. Oh, we grew up, the older generation. He believes we should have American flag on every porch. He believes children should play safe. He wants a safe America. And he wants a strong military. He wants us to lead the world. We've always been the world leader. That's what he wants. And I get so frustrated. I read that he's a racist and he's a bigot. I spent 40 years studying people. That's what special agents do. Investigating people, studying people. The man loves his country like nobody. I mean, I respect him as much as I do my own father.
Wow. Because
I've seen what his intent is. My father's my number one hero. Donald Trump's a close second. I've had so many conversations with him. When you talk to somebody, you get to know him. And off record, no one's in the room, just me and him talking. And he's a normal guy. He really is. He really is a normal person, has normal thoughts, and loves his family and loves his country and wants to do the right thing for this country. And he takes a lot of hate.
Yeah.
So he gets it that, he knows I have a security detail now because of the threats. He understands that. So we kind of connect in different ways. And matter of fact, my death threats are nowhere near his. He's probably got more than I do, but he comes to work every day. Like me, he left a good living to come back and work for the government. I mean, he didn't have to do this. He could stay back and run $1 billion business, but he came back because he loves his country, wants to do right. And people can attack him all you want, but you can't argue his success. We got the most secure border in history of this nation because of Donald Trump. We're removing significant public safety threats, illegal aliens every day from this country because of Donald Trump's vision and his leadership. I'm proud to work with him. And when I retire for the third time, I'll have great memories because I believe in what he's doing. If I didn't, I wouldn't be back here doing this.
Well, you managed to get rid of all of Joe Biden's illegal aliens, or at least the criminals?
My goal, people always say, when are you going to retire? I like to say I want to retire when every illegal alien, criminal threat, public safety threat, national security threats eradicated from this country. That's when I'll rest. But until then, I'm going to keep going.
Well, we're very lucky to have you. Thank you so much, Tom Homan.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Podforce One is where the world's most powerful people reveal what really drives them. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons so that you won't miss future interviews with the biggest names in Washington and the world. We'll see you next week.